The following program is intended for mature audiences.
TBS, America's #1 independent television network, presents the following sports exclusive.
You're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Follow us on Twitter at Basically Sports.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes.
And check out every episode of the show at basicallysports.tumblr.com.
Now here's your hosts, Zach,
Greg, Mike.
And you're listening to Basically a Sports Show.
Let's do our annual NHL preview. Take it away, Zach.
The National Hockey League, well, it kicks off on Wednesday. Big news in the NHL today, boys. Green Day forms a 2-year partnership with the league. One of their new songs off their forthcoming album will be featured as the theme for NBC hockey for the next year. And they'll perform at the 2020 All-Star Game.
Can't we just use ESPN's old theme on the NBC thing? And that'd be fine with me.
I mean, NBC's hockey theme's pretty good. To Green Day, though, I just have to ask, is it 2004 again? What's going on?
They put out a new single. They announced a huge tour, world tour with Weezer and Fall Out Boy. Pretty big tour.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to get some tickets to that next year. But, yeah, I know. It's the typical NHL thing where it's not the most relevant current band. However, Green Day is still a pretty big get for the NHL.
I think, I mean, they're still a big band. There's no question about it.
Yeah. They're doing a stadium tour.
It's just striking me as a bit weird, though, because, like, I can't – this has to be the first time I've ever heard of, like, a band signing, an exclusive deal with an entire league. I don't think –
any league or just the NHL, because that stupid Sunday Night Football thing, that's exactly what's going on there with the the Sunday Night Football song.
Waiting all day for Sunday night.
Yeah, Joan Jett's involved in it now.
Sunday night.
But are you really going to tell me? Yeah, I didn't even, all the bullshit aside, I just like the dun 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 to play that, you know, and play dun 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 dun.
But Greg, how will I know if I'm ready for some football?
Well, I guess you won't. You'll just have to take your chances. And if you are, you are. If you're not, you're not. Sorry. Anyway, back to hockey. Let's do the hockey.
The actual hockey. So we'll start with the reigning Stanley Cup champion.
My St. Louis Blues at long last.
The St. Louis friggin' Blues.
Did anybody? Okay.
We went Blues. We went Blues.
I mean, I never thought we'd ever say that. It was just one of those things. It was like we made fun of them every year. We had the annual St. Louis It's Over party or whatever we called it. And there I am watching them skate around with the cup last year. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
Well, Wednesday is a feature of the back-to-back Cup champions with two teams, again, that we never thought were going to do this damn thing in Washington and in St. Louis. But here we are living in the bizarro world that is the current NHL standings.
I mean, I'm thrilled for the Blues, don't get me wrong, but I just, what's next? The Cleveland Browns win the Super Bowl?
I'm grateful to our previous two Stanley Cup champions for, sparing us Golden Knights and Bruins championships.
Yes,
that could have gone badly.
Really badly.
True. That is something that we can all, agree that we're all here for the better. But the Blues, so they didn't stand pat. They went out just before the season. They traded for Justin Falk of the Hurricanes. They got a fine deal, and I think that's a good deal for them. They finished third in the Central last year. They were a point behind Nashville, tied with Winnipeg, 99 points. Their over-under for this season, if I could find them, is where'd it go? Where's the St. Louis's? Oh, they're there. Their over-under is again 99.8. So it's a matter of, do they go? Are they better than they were last year? Are they worse? Or are they right there? But basically, with another year under the belt for a rookie goaltender, Jordan Binnington, with making that move on defense for Justin Falk, are the Blues better? Can they defend their Stanley Cup championship?
No.
Can we get a Blues dynasty?
No.
I'm okay. dynasties in hockey are probably the hardest types of dynasties to establish, just because each year in and out, it's so hard to win the Stanley Cup just once, let alone multiple times. I'm sorry. I give the Blues a lot of credit for not staying pat, because that's certainly the easy thing to do. But I don't think I don't think they're going to repeat it, especially when you kind of go over you kind of go over their division, about how they were third. They tied with Winnipeg and were behind Nashville. And it kind of just shows how tough that division is, let alone the rest of the league. And again, we need to remember that last year in the playoffs, Winnipeg was up 2-1 on them and had a lead going into the third period of Game 4. And then Winnipeg blew that, and St. Louis came back and won that and tied the series up and then went on to win it. But that was one of those like rare cases where you're like, oh wow, like the Blues were kind of underperforming in the playoffs, and then like that was the moment when the switch flipped.
Hell, they were underperforming in the season. I mean, that's the thing that's amazing about them too, was where they were in January. I mean, it was well documented. Last place in the West, nearly last place in the league. And then they finish a point from winning the division ultimately. And they had what ended up being the fourth best record in the Western Conference. So I think they'll be better. I think it's a matter of getting consistency for them.
My thing was
you can't just live on runs like that. It just doesn't happen.
It also depends too. I mean, Bennington played a grand total of like 40 games last year plus the playoffs.
Yeah.
If he turns out to be a top flight NHL goalie, I like the chances better. But you've still got the cup hangover. I don't care what anybody says. You win a championship, it's always harder to get the second one than it is the first one. So I think they'll be okay, but I also think they're going to go back to being the Blues again next year.
Also, like that run again was pretty magical once they got clicking on all cylinders. And like Zach said, you can't really live and die by that. No. I think they're going to be a good team, and I think that they have a shot at doing it, but I think that that as always, winning the Stanley Cup is very, very hard, and I think there are plenty of other teams that have just as good, if not better, chances than they do. So the smart money's on no.
Yeah, and one last thing on the Blues is that you got to remember too, they did not blues at every opportunity, and they had a lot of opportunities to do the Blues thing last year, and they didn't do it. And that was a first for them, because we have seen them how many times over the years get in a situation, go, man, they might actually do it, and then, and that's that. And they didn't do that last year. So that's where we are. I think no. I think they'll be in the running, but I'd like to see it happen. I don't think it will.
Yeah, I think for them, it comes down to, I think on paper, adding Justin Falk and just solidifying what they have in terms of their skaters helps. It's all going to depend on is Binnington the goalie we saw
right
at the end of the year and in the playoffs, or is he going to be Matt Murray, where he has that incredible run? And sure, he's a fine starter, but he's just not that elite guy that you saw then.
Yeah.
The other question I have for this division, there's a lot of potential and new faces going on here. So Nashville, is in transition a little bit, where they move guys around. They get Duchesne, the guy that they were trying to trade for, at the end of last year. But he went to Columbus, but then Columbus has since been dismantled. So Nashville gets in Johansson. Winnipeg, their defense has been decimated. They finally re-signed their RFAs that were lingering, but I think Winnipeg's going to take a huge hit because of of all the guys they lose on defense. Dallas brings in these one last shot at a cup guys with Joe Pavelski and Corey Perry, and Colorado is the young darlings. There's so many people that are picking Colorado to be the team that, just fire and wins the division with all these young guys. Basically, what my question is, I'm going to take Winnipeg out of it because I think they're going to drop pretty hard. Between who finishes ahead in the three teams of Nashville, Dallas, Colorado. Is Colorado ready to go? Does Dallas bring in these new faces to really jumpstart them? Or does Nashville, who was the division champion last year, get that jump to be a real cup contender again with Duchesne?
Wow. Well, they lost Subban. He went to New Jersey.
Yeah, Subban goes to New Jersey. That's a big loss for them. But I don't know if it's as huge of a loss as some people might paint it.
Yeah, I think 5 years ago it's a huge loss. I'm not so sure today.
Yeah, he's still a very good player, but they've got other defensemen that are just fine. My personal thought on it is I think Colorado is going to take a step, but they're not going to be that division champion that people want them to be.
I agree with that.
And Dallas is turned into the team in the West, at least, that is all potential and no finish. They're in that. They're going to do it this time. Oh, are they? Is Ben Bishop going to be as good? Does bringing on these guys that are older and slower, and Corey Perry and Joe Pavelski, really help them that much? Joe Pavelski's still a good player, but Perry is. I love the guy, but he's even going to start the year injured, so that's not a great.
Well, not to mention the fact you've always got to consider Ben Bishop's health too. I mean, he's had issues over the years. So I mean, a lot of things have to fall into the right place, and you look at it like that. I'm with you. I think that Colorado probably they're kind of like what the Browns are right now. They've got some talent assembled, but they're probably still a year away. Dallas.
I think that's actually a perfect comparison.
I don't know, with the age thing and all that. And, I mean, when Bishop's good, he's good. But he gets hurt, and, I don't know what else they've got. But I think Nashville might still be the team to beat in that division. Maybe not quite as dominant as they used to be, but they'll still be there.
Yeah.
That's my thought on it. Mike, what do you think?
This is hard. I think Nashville's going to stick around.
Yeah. I think I agree. I think it'll be Nashville, St. Louis fighting for the top of that division.
Yeah.
And then I think Dallas finishes of those four contenders, Dallas finishes fourth among them, but they're still a playoff team at the end of it because Winnipeg's going to fall out. Chicago is another real wild card. We don't need to spend too much time on them, but it's a matter of a team with that much talent can't be that bad again. And they get a whole year with a new coach. So see what that goes with. And then Minnesota. Bruce Boudreau is singing his last praises, I think. Yeah.
Minnesota's going to be bad.
Yeah. They're going to be one of those teams that's the middle. They're not going to be the bottom, but they're a team that needs a big shakeup, but they're so locked up that they can't.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Pacific Division. The Pacific Division last year was such a weird thing because Calgary put together the season out of nowhere that nobody could have expected them to have. Vegas started terrible but got back into form. They still finished in third place. San Jose is what you expect out of San Jose, generally speaking. But then the Ducks take a fall and the Kings take a fall and Edmonton still can't get it together. But you also have two teams that are, again, brimming with potential in Arizona and Vancouver to potentially upset it. So I guess I'll start with those two teams. Arizona brings in Phil Kessel. Arizona has these young players like Clayton Keller that are building. Rick Tocchet seems to be a pretty decent coach. Vancouver is another team that they rebuilt very quickly. They get rid of the Sedins a couple of years ago, and now they have Elias Pettersson, Brock Besser, Bo Horvat kind of leading the new contingent there. Do you think either one of those teams can break into the playoff mix this year and finally get that next step as a young team, trying to make some
I think either one of them could make the playoff step. I don't see them doing much more than that.
The question I think we need to ask is how does Vegas handle themselves? We're in year 3, had a monster run year 1, took a step back year 2, but over the course of taking a step back, they moved a lot of pieces and kind of shifted a philosophy from win in 5 years to win now. And obviously last year they fell short of that, but only because the Sharks managed to find a way to not completely shark. So I don't know.
which is an accomplishment for the Sharks to just not shark.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well,
look what they did for the Blues. They won a Stanley Cup, not blueing. Come on.
The Sharks eventually did shark, though,
They
to the
always
Blues,
do.
ironically.
Yeah.
And the Blues went Blues. So
Yeah. And so I would say, I don't know. This is a weird one. I like Vancouver's younger team.
I do too.
Arizona was, I don't want to say they were knocking on the door because, yes, they were the highest ranked team in the West to not make the playoffs. But they were also they also had a negative 10 goal differential, so that's not entirely positive. But honestly, I kind of like the young teams that Vancouver and Arizona have. I mean, it's always tricky because, young team could mean anything, but it could be wild card. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do well. But I'll take a chance and say both Vancouver and Arizona end up in the top 3 of the Pacific.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning that way. I think Calgary switches up goaltenders. They get rid of Mike Smith. They trade him to Edmonton, and they get Cam Talbot back. So I don't know that they really fixed their goaltending. and I mean, I told you guys all year last year, like Calgary is a paper tiger waiting to be overthrown.
Yeah.
They finally were in the playoffs. I just don't know how that doesn't carry over into this year. So I think Calgary takes a drop. I think San Jose is still the best team in the division. Yes, they lose Pavelski, but and Thornton's a year older, but you have a healthy Erik Karlsson. You still have Brent Burns, and you have some guys like Couture and Hurdle that are really going to step up and take over those roles. So I put San Jose to win the division. Vegas, as much as I hate to say it, I think Vegas is good enough to stick around now, at least for now. Like their future is screwed, but they're good for the right now, and they get a full year of Mark Stone.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, I don't want to get into this whole thing with the Vegas thing, but this is great right now. But these fans don't know what it's like to go through a season where you're just abysmal. Yeah. And if they think that, I mean, they've set a good fan base. But anyway, go ahead.
I'll give them like in 2 years they'll hit that wall. I like Vancouver. I still think they need to develop on the back end a little bit and in net. I'm gonna say the Coyotes finish above Vegas and make it into the top 3.
Cool.
Because I think Antti Raanta is a good goalie. He was injured for a lot of last year. That's where you get the goal differential. I think Phil Kessel being around is going to help a lot. Like he's a guy that knows how to win. He's a guy that loves playing for Rick Tocchet.
I don't think Phil Kessel's a guy that you don't jump on his back and ride your way through the playoffs. But I think he's a good complimentary guy. And if you've got and I forget, I drafted
the number 1 guy there.
Yeah, I drafted somebody last night from the Coyotes. I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, I think that's a possibility. I agree with that. But it was one of the kids that's going to be playing with them. I thought this could be good.
Yeah,
it was an all potential move, but you never know.
I like Arizona moving up. I think Vancouver is still maybe 1 more year away. The other teams in the division, Edmonton, Jesus.
How do you get Connor McDavid and still suck?
I don't know. They're trying something. They're trying something.
What, so they're going to go with something besides like 19 forwards and a goalie?
I forgot who's the coach there. Who took over? Dave Tippett. So here's the thing. Edmonton could be a team that I think Edmonton and the Ducks could be teams that screw this whole thing up for everybody's predictions on the Pacific. Because, yes, Edmonton now has Mike Smith. Doesn't make them good. Their defense is still very suspect.
That's gold medal winner.
Who played exactly as much Olympic hockey as I did that year. I'm just saying.
But you have Connor McDavid, and you have a guy in Dave Tippett who, for years, made the Coyotes hard to play against and made them a team that picked up points where they necessarily didn't deserve them every night. So I think Edmonton could screw things up, if only because of better coaching finally, and they have Ken Holland in their GM where they're starting to make the right tinkering to turn this ship around. I don't know how they go.
Dave Tippett has the best picture if you search for him on Google. Take a look at that.
Oh. His picture from his playing days with the staff.
Yeah, I guarantee you he didn't wear a helmet either. I don't know how old he is. He might be too young to have not worn a helmet, but.
And then with my Fair Ducks, a new coach in Dallas Eakins. They're embracing the youth movement. If the kids click for Eakins like they did in San Diego in the AHL, the Ducks again could make some noise. And again, John Gibson being one of the best goaltenders in the league doesn't hurt. So if they can manage Gibson correctly, get the kids all playing that up-tempo fast game, and based on what I've seen in the preseason, they're embracing the play fast mentality. They could make some noise. And the Kings are going to be garbage. Kings are in for some lean years. They still have a lot of rebuilding to do.
I don't know if that breaks anyone's heart, but, you know.
No. But that's the West.
All right. Who do we like out of the West, real quick?
Oh.
You know what? I'm not even getting – never mind. I don't even want to try it right now.
You know what I'm going to do? Based purely on what I was talking about with the past two Stanley Cup champions.
Don't do it.
San Jose Sharks.
No.
Doing it. San Jose Sharks.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to be between them and Nashville. No, you know what? I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to put my St. Louis Blues back in there again. I think that after we've gone through everything, I'm going, you know what? Maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see. I really, honest to God, I got no idea. There's no what I would call a real standout in that whole bunch.
I'm gonna go completely out of left field. Fuck it. The Edmonton Oilers. Let's say. Oh, Canada, our home and native land.
Ottawa and Edmonton for the Cup, baby. Let's see it.
No, Greg.
Ottawa, Edmonton, Stanley Cup, NBC Sports headquarters just explodes.
All right, let's go to the East.
In the East,
home of my Columbus Blue Jackets in the Met division.
Let's start with the good old Mets.
Welcome back to the bottom, boys.
So here's the big question, I think, with the Met, and I'm going to put this one out there to you. I don't know how it's going to take, but here we go. Are the Carolina Hurricanes the best team in this division?
Ooh.
No.
Because Pittsburgh is continuing to slip. The Islanders could be a one-year fluke. Columbus has clearly been dismantled and is going to slide back down. Philadelphia, while improving, probably isn't ready to go. It's Carolina or Washington for the top of this division. And they have some young players. They have Jake Gardner, your boy, Mike. I don't know. There's a lot of good buzz around the Jerks, despite their terrible road uniforms.
The Redneck Rangers are the third best team in the Met.
Third.
I think Washington's better.
Yeah.
And the Islanders very well could be a one-year wonder, especially because, well, the Hurricanes kind of pants them in the playoffs. So
yeah, that was weird.
And so there is some concern with the Islanders, I admit, but the Islanders, I don't know, like they still had a tremendous regular season, and I'm not ready to write them off as a one-year wonder. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm going to tentatively put the bunch of jerks, the Redneck Rangers, the Hockey Honkies, number 3.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm ready to say they're the best team in that division, but I think they'll be okay.
I don't think they're the best team either. I still think you have to give that to Washington.
I was going to say that I've got to go with the Caps until further notice.
The Hurricanes did beat them in the first round, but
they were coming off
playoffs.
They were coming off a Stanley Cup win and all that, and that, like I said, it's just hard to win that second championship.
Yeah.
My Blue Jackets are probably going to be bringing up the rear.
No,
that's the Rangers. The Rangers will be the worst team in this division.
The Rangers far and away. Still, they're still trying to rebuild. I think the team from that bottom group, though, that I want to ask a question about is the New Jersey Devils. They bring in PK Subban. They draft Jack Hughes, American hero, number 1 overall. New Jersey also has a lot of things kind of going for it in that if it all comes together, maybe much better than we think. This was a team that made the playoffs 2 years ago based on an incredible Taylor Hall performance. Taylor Hall had a down year last year, but he's going to be a free agent after this year. And we know what free agent years do to hockey players.
Yes.
He's a guy that could have a great season. Add in a guy that's an exceptional young player in Hughes, plus some nice new defenders, and Nico Hischier's another top pick that's developing there. PK Subban in the mix. Can the Devils push for a playoff spot?
I think they could, definitely.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, because you got a Washington team that's a year older. I don't know what they did in the offseason, but
nothing of true note.
And the Redneck Rangers, and then I could see it. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I think this is a division that is kind of tightening up because you have the teams at the top. Washington's still very good, but then the Islanders could slip. Carolina's moving up. Pittsburgh's coming down. Columbus is coming down. Philly could be up or down. The Rangers are down. And so the Devils are on the way up. So you have this thing where the top teams are coming down, the bottom teams are coming up, and everybody's going to be kind of tight. This is based on, again, the 5 teams that made the playoffs. This is a division that could, 3 points could determine whether you finish third or you finish like 6th in this division at the end of the day. So I think that'll be an interesting one to take overall. And this will make up – I still think this will make up the majority of the playoff field. They still could get 5 because you look at the Atlantic and you have the three of the best 4 or 5 teams in the league, Tampa, Boston, Toronto, at least last year. I guess Tampa's going to be good as they were last year. I don't think there's anything to even question there with them.
The only you got to
is their mental space still there?
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, we've seen it with the Seahawks. We're watching it happen now with the Falcons. How does this affect? And granted, this did not happen in the Stanley Cup Finals, but they came in off a record-setting season and got swept by a team that had no business sweeping them.
The thing about it, about what happened to the Lightning last year, is that it doesn't get the story that it deserves because it's 1, hockey in the United States, and 2, it's a small market. But when you look,
could you imagine if the Maple Leafs did what they did?
If you could imagine what the Maple Leafs did, what they did, or again, say
Blackhawks.
No. Just hear this out. Say the New England Patriots go undefeated in the regular season and then lose their first playoff game
by like 40 points.
By like 40 points, like it's not even close. Like that's like. But when you look at what happened here, and then you compare it to like the closest examples you can, you've got I think the ones that come to mind, you've got the other 62 team win, the 62 game win in the NHL, the Detroit Red Wings from, I believe, 94, was it?
Was it 94 or 95?
94, 95, where they lost in the conference finals.
Yeah.
Then you've got the 73 win Golden State Warriors in the NBA, who lost in the finals, in Game 7 of the finals. And then you've got the what was it? The 2008? No. I was thinking about the 2008 Patriots. Who
2007.
Was that 2007 Patriots who went 18-0 and then lost in the Super Bowl. And you look at those cases and you go, well, they all made it pretty far before blowing it, and
they all won the next year.
Whereas, like,
so the Patriots did they?
No. No, they didn't. But
the Red Wings and Warriors both did.
Red Wings and
Didn't the Red Wings play them? Who did the Devils play when they won the Cup in '95? Wasn't it the Red Wings?
It was the Red Wings, yeah.
Okay.
I think yes. But anyway, the point is
Because you said they went out in the conference finals that year, but I'm like, no, they played in the final. They made it to the conference. Or they made it to the cup final.
Whatever. No,
I get what you're
Whatever
saying.
the year was.
Yeah, I get it right. Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. My point is that the Tampa Bay Lightning didn't just lose in the first round; they got swept. And when you look at the totality of North American sports, I don't think there's a single postseason choke job as significant as this. Like, this might be the greatest collapse in the history of sports.
Well, it wasn't like they got swept in 4 tight games. They got their asses kicked.
Exactly. They weren't even there.
And so, I don't know how this translates into the regular season. I mean, the year before, the Tampa Bay Lightning, not the juggernaut they were last year, but the year before that, they were still a pretty good team, high-scoring team in the league. They got blanked in the final 2 games, the Eastern Conference Finals against Washington. Washington would go on to win the Cup. And then, they were obviously very pissed off about how that ended for them because they came out at the start of last season on fire. We saw what happened, 62 games, 103-point differential. This was a very talented team. You had people legitimately calling them perhaps the greatest hockey team of all time. And then we saw what happened. But you see – I guess the questions I have, one, what's their mental state like? Because if they come out guns blazing, I mean, that's great. But then again, guns blazing last year is one of the theories people have as to why they lost, because the Lightning came into last season trying to prove something. And they basically played at a high tempo pace for most of the season when most teams kind of, most teams do kind of slide during that mid-meet period. And
it's the opposite of what the Blackhawks and Kings used to do.
Mm-hmm.
Remember how pissed off I used to get at the goddamn Blackhawks?
Yeah.
Because they would just kind of like moseying around, going through the season, and then all of a sudden, it's about that time, huh? And then they just flipped the switch, and it was like no team had ever been as dominant as that team in this 20-minute stretch.
Yeah.
It really was fun to watch. I got to be honest, but yeah.
But that's kind of the opposite of what Tampa did. Where like you can't. I think that's something that John Cooper definitely should learn from last year. That winning at the beginning doesn't matter. It just does not matter. And I think that's something that the Ducks ended up learning, and it didn't benefit them at the end of the day. But when they were with Bruce Boudreau at the beginning, they would try to just kick everybody's ass all they could and storm all the way to the playoffs. And then they would get there, and then they just couldn't do it. So then there was certain years where it's just like, you know what? I don't like, at least as a fan base, we learned to say we don't care right now. Cool November win, guy. What's going to happen when we get to April? What's going to happen if can you get to May? Can you get to June? It's
a marathon. It's not a sprint.
I mean,
exactly.
I mean, with the Lightning, you have to ask, it's almost 2 separate questions. One, do you think that they're going to be a top 3 team in this division? Do you think they're going to make the playoffs? And that's yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way they're not.
But are they going to?
How bad that division is.
And then you ask, like, once they're in the playoffs, can they get it done? And I'm not expecting another first round sweep, but I honestly, I'm of the opinion, I'm fully on board with this opinion that I don't think John Cooper has it in him to win a Stanley Cup. And I saw that up close and personal last season, living in Tampa, consuming media here, watching the interviews, seeing the interviews pop up. John Cooper has no urgency. John Cooper is kind of arrogant and kind of assumed things would work out for him, and they didn't. I mean, it's been kind of a joke, but his response was, after they went down 2 games to nothing, right? Oh, it's a 5-alarm fire. It's like, that's all you've got? Like, this is a guy who didn't really make any lineup adjustments. He didn't do anything to shake up the team and to change the dynamic when it was clear that what was going out wasn't working. He assumed like John Cooper's team blew through the regular season, and I think he just assumed that if we keep sticking with what we've got, eventually it'll click, and it never did.
Yeah. With the Lightning, they bring back essentially the same team. Like there's not a whole lot to talk about with the Lightning because they're going to be good. but we won't be able to judge whether they're good enough until April.
Yeah.
April and May. That's when we can judge the Lightning. Otherwise, I think they're a top 3 team. But the other question I have in this division kind of goes right to you, Mike. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs have home ice advantage in a first-round playoff series? And will they have to play the Bruins?
To answer that, you have to look at the rest of the division.
Oh, God, this division is garbage.
And so you got Montreal, Florida, Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa.
Detroit and Ottawa are going to be terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Back to normal for the Red Wings.
Buffalo, I don't expect much out of.
Buffalo should be about the same.
They were the champions of November last year, and that was fun.
They got a banner for that, though, right?
Yeah.
Montreal, I don't think is as bad as everyone says they are, but I think at best they're a wild card team.
No, but Montreal's biggest problem is that Florida got better.
Yeah, I think that Florida got better, but I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think
Bobrovsky,
yeah, and Quenneville, who's no slouch.
And Joe Quenneville, exactly.
Yes. The problem is that it kind of seems like management there is trying to create like the retirement Blackhawks, and I'm unsure if like this is just going to be a place where like some past their prime guys are like, oh yeah, Coach Joe, and we'll play for him because he was, we like him, and it'll be South Florida, so it'll be like a semi-retirement essentially.
Yeah.
I
you want to know what
what you call them, the retirement Panthers?
No, the retirement Blackhawks.
Blackhawks,
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I like that.
Here's my thought on how this division breaks down, though, because this is how I get what I want. I think your Toronto Maple Leafs are going to win this division, Mike.
Oh, the big
and
thing.
I think Tampa's number 2, and I think Florida is number 3. I want that all South Florida playoff series in the first round.
Tampa Bay, Florida, the Florida Cup. There's actually
Sergei Bobrovsky could go out and shut him down 4 straight times again. That would be fucking hysterical.
And
look,
despite you winning the division in my scenario, you still have to play the Bruins in the first round.
The Bruins are a wild card team.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least off home ice, I guess. That's the problem of predicting this division, honestly, is actually the Bruins, because I'm still kind of at a point where I don't know what to make of them, because
I don't know how that team made the Cup final. I really don't.
They're getting older, and they were already getting older last year. Obviously they have some young pieces, but by and large, the core of that team's getting older. The shine's starting to come off Tuukka Rask. How did they make the Cup finals? Well, they beat Toronto. Then, instead of having to play Tampa, like they probably should have, they ended up playing a Blue Jackets team overachieving, and then they played a Hurricanes team that was really overachieving. So they really only had to play, like, on the eastern side of the bracket, like the Toronto series was their toughest one, and once they got by that, it was kind of
because thanks to upsets, they basically any competition fell right out of the way for them last year. Yeah,
they didn't have to play the Capitals, they didn't have to play the Islanders, they didn't have to play the Penguins. They just cruised. After that 7-game Toronto series, they just cruised their way to the finals. Boston's hard to gauge. Like, I keep thinking and this isn't just my anti-Boston prejudice, but it does seem like this is a Boston team whose like floor should be falling out of them soon. So I honestly don't know, and that's going to be the thing, because I do like what Florida did. I think Florida is going to. I'll say it. I'll say this. Florida will make the playoffs. The thing is that I don't know if it's going to be as a wild card team or as a top 3 division team, and that's entirely going to come down to what Boston does or not, because Boston could pull some bullshit season out of their ass, and
sure.
But at the same time, if Boston falls off, then that does open up a spot for the Panthers.
So who do we like out of the East, boys?
Fuck it, Toronto Maple Leafs.
I'm going with you, Mike. Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's do it.
Let's go.
Give us the Patrick Marleau Cup, right?
I'm going to come right out and say it. I think this is the year y'all finally end your drought.
Sharks Maple Leafs Stanley Cup Finals. Patrick Marleau is there to drop the puck in the ceremonial first game.
Hey, Mike, do you remember, what was it, 2 years ago when I told you that Patrick Marleau contract was going to suck?
Yeah.
And then what happened to Patrick Marleau this last year? What happened? Oh, he cost too much money, so they traded him to Carolina, who then bought him out. You were so excited for that, and you're like, "No, it's going to work." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure it is, Mike."
Toronto Maple Leafs versus St. Louis Blues. There's your Stanley Cup final, folks.
I mean, the Patrick Marleau thing made sense in theory.
He just ended up being a surrogate dad for Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner.
I mean, yeah, well, you know.
All right. Well, let's not go down that rabbit hole. All right. So there you go, folks. Are we done? Is that our NHL preview?
That is the NHL hockey preview. Who will win the cup?
Toronto
I don't
Maple
know.
Leafs. I don't really know either. I would love to see the Leafs do it because I just love stories like that, but I got no idea. None.
I don't think anybody does at this point, but
it's really kind of a tough season to call. I mean, usually you can at least kind of go, well, we know this is going to happen. I'm not really sure of anything.
All the top teams have issues.
Yeah.
You know, like, sure, Tampa's the best team, but they have a big old hole in their brain somewhere.